Hey, welcome back, Visions fans. Today we're going over how Kotetsu in Gilgamesh's kit actually works as hybrid damage, because it's not as intuitive as you might think. There are some enormous caveats to it. Everything I'm about to say has essentially already been written and put forward by Meow, who is one of the data miners, so, very little of this is my own research. So big thank you to him and what he's done for the community. I just want to give it the exposure it deserves, because we're seeing a lot of it and it's super popular. So, kind of just jumping into it. Why doesn't it work like you think? So Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, the kind of predecessor to this game, I was a content reviewer there, played it for years, and the way hybrid damage works in that game is it essentially is a weighted average of your attack and magic. So in my head, I'm like, all right, it's probably similar idea here. Gilgamesh is actually in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius as well. That's a 16-bit version. So like, there's some precedent, if you will, for what hybrid damage normally interacts. And in my head, I'm like, cool, I'm going to go and I actually maxed Rose's Barrette, because in thinking, I'm like, all right, it increases attack and magic by 50%. Gilgamesh would love this for the hybrid attacks. Wrong. I can't fucking believe it doesn't. So, hybrid attack? Sort of. It mainly scales off, almost primarily off of your attack stat, and the sources of attack, so Vision Card, Esper, buffs to attack, etc. The key differentiator to this equation is that the equipment is supremely important for how it blends into things. Where the attack stats on your equipment, they'll be cut in half essentially, and then the other, whatever magic stats are on your equipment will be cut in half. We'll get to that in a second. So the benefits, he benefits from slash attack up, ice attack up, those kinds of things, because it does, the modifiers still apply. But the only magic in the entire damage calc, this is what was like mind blowing to me, is the magic you have on your equipment, and then it's cut in half. So no, not even his own magic stats apply. Buffs, vision cards, espers, nothing except for the magic stat on equipment, and even then you cut it in half. So that's like a separate calculation. So long story short, it essentially takes his total attack, and then it minus the equipment attack, and then it weight averages the attack, the equipment attack and magic. Weird as fuck, at least in my opinion. That doesn't seem right. And Brave and Faith both increase damage. I originally made this next slide too to kind of go over the numbers, but the long story short, all you need to know is, you can read this if you really understand it, but the long story short is, more faith means more damage for both he and the person that he's targeting. So that's all you need to know. In terms of other hybrid properties, so this is where like it technically counts as a hybrid ability. There are still like modifier buffs that apply. So Titan, these vision cards, Titan and Blossoms in the Dark, that give 25 man killer on physical or magic attacks. Technically this counts as both, so it does apply to both. So that's kind of cool at least. Equipment that boosts magic or physical modifiers, so like the magic string TMR from Celir, where it's human killer 25 on magic attack, technically applies, so that's kind of cool. And then technically it's affected by silence and blind, where silence, it's a magic attack, so you can silence him and he can't cast it. And if you blind him, well, it's a physical attack, so he may not land it. Really interesting things to note there. How it factors into defense and SPR. So essentially the enemy defense and SPR is just cut in half. It's 50%. So if the target has 20 defense and 10 SPR, that's a total of like 30% mitigation on the incoming damage. You essentially cut both those in half. So it's treated as if it's only 10 defense and 5 SPR, so 15% total mitigation. That's kind of how that's all factored in. And if it's an odd number, it's rounded up. Noteworthy interactions to keep in mind can be dodged by both reflex and magic reflex, because it counts as both a physical and a magic attack. It can be dodged by Hallett's TMR, which is evades one physical attack. Protect and Shell mitigated at 50% of the normal effectiveness. So where normally each one protects or shells by 25% mitigation, it's essentially only half. So 12% physical damage mitigated, or 12% magic damage mitigated. But technically they can stack. So if you have something like Yuna's TMR, where she casts both Protect and Shell, you'll get the full 25% because, one plus the other. And then finally, this is the weirdest interaction. Physical barriers will reduce the damage. That makes sense to me, where it's a physical attack, so if you have a physical barrier, it'll be reduced. The same is not true for magical barriers. Magic barriers will not reduce the Kotetsu, which is weird as fuck to me, because through everything so far, it's been considered a magic attack. So I know, like Christmas or Winter Venera is one of those characters that has a magic barrier. Well, if she gets hit by Kotetsu, that barrier will do nothing against it. That's a weird interaction to me. But barriers that do both, so things like Orlando's TMR or Ayaka's TMR that just kind of shield physical and magical, it will reduce the damage because the physical part still counts. how to maximize the damage. So as much attack stat as possible, attack percent boosting equipment and buffs, and then modifiers. So slash attack up, ice attack up, any kind of killers that are applicable. So all of that will maximize the damage of Kotetsu. And that's it in a nutshell. This was something that I really wanted to go over because obviously he was just released and he's super popular right now. Not a lot is known about the equation, but really should be known just so you're not wasting resources like I did on assumption that turned out to not be correct. So again, big thank you to Meow for putting this all together. Hope you all learned something, and for those of you that are using them, have fun, good luck, and per usual, comments, corrections, critiques, and criticisms, all in the comments below. Much appreciated. So look forward to doing more content soon, and I'll talk to y'all later.